All right, next day, removed the plastic covering that was installed so that we couldn't access the other voltage taps. So now we can use the little selector as normally intended from the factory. And like I mentioned yesterday, we're gonna go ahead and just tackle the bottom section here, get that dialed in. That's probably the most work. And then all this up here, a lot of work been done to it, but I think it's more just gonna be picking and choosing where we want to focus our efforts. So let's go ahead and rig the amp the other way. Gotta be very careful doing that, use some foam and whatnot to protect everything, and then get started. All right, that should work. So a few interesting things to note here. Obviously, we've got a replaced bias resistor, and this thing biased actually 100% at 120. So this will be staying. It's an old RS, it looks like. So that's totally fine. We'll just remount it. This is probably the original bias cap, if not original, very old Hunts. So we'll be replacing that with the Vichet 220 microfarad there. And then the can cap is actually a triple can cap. It is an old replacement. Maybe these were all done at the same time. And this normally would be a 2, would be a dual 16. And I can't read the value on it because it's covered by the claw that holds it in, but it might be a triple 32, in which case that would make sense because we are missing a 30 microfarad cap that's usually mounted over here. So we've got a replacement F&T dual that I'll be swapping here, and then I've got a 30 microfarad 500 volt discrete cap, which will be kind of doing what it needs to do over there. And then, yeah, all of these resistors we will be replacing. I don't know if you can see, but these look pretty charred. Looks pretty black and toasted. So these are almost always a good idea in vintage AC30s to replace. We were going to be using these nice Dale style ones here. So we got 470 ohm. Those are for the screens, for screen grid. And then for the grid stoppers, these are 3K. And 470 is a very typical value. You'll see these in like fenders, for example, blackface fenders. Very, very common value. Good kind of in-betweener. I know some people go higher, 1K maybe. I think I did 470 in my personal AC30, if I remember correctly. And then 3K was based off recommendation from Psionic Audio. I think this is the value he uses. I know he's mentioned this in previous videos. And I think I also put this in my own personal AC30. So, yeah, lots to get done here. And I do want to just note the obvious that we've got to replace tube socket here and what appears to be burn marks around it. So some catastrophic failure occurred in this area and it took the tube socket with it. So we're not going to touch that. We'll leave it. I'm sure it's just fine. All right, let's get to work. Cool, so there's the screen and grid stop resistors all done. I always like to reuse the original insulation that came on there, and I also keep the resistors long and do the kind of curvy, cool stuff, just as an homage to the originals. Certainly not necessary by any means, but just something I think looks nice and, you know, looks relatively period correct. Also, I enjoy the look of these resistors. They don't stand out in this amplifier. They actually blend in pretty well. So now we can go ahead and shift our attention over to the bias cap and the bias resistor, get that sorted out, and continue making our way down. So here's the can cap out of the amp, and I can't really read. Yeah, I can't make it out what it is exactly. So anyways, doesn't matter. Factory value is 1616, so that's what we will be replacing. Just want to clean that position up a little bit, that ground, since it's a fairly important ground. I want to make sure the all the debris and stuff is out of the way. So we'll hit it with some more isopropyl just to make it nice and clean. All of the other grime and dirt around it, there's no real value to cleaning other than to make the amp look real good, but that's just added labor, and I know the owner doesn't care about that too much. So this is about performance. Nice and smooth. Wow. I don't know if the camera will pick up that, but looks much better. So there's the filter cap installed. I forgot to hit record while I was wiring and all that stuff, but just soldering the connections, pretty straightforward. You've got the DC voltage coming out of the rectifier that's going to one of the caps, as well as the red right here from the output transformer. This would be the center tap, and then the two black wires are the choke, and then the other end of the choke we've got this resistor, and then this wire which goes over here. And this was a replacement, which was for that third cap that was in the can cap. So this is going to be removed, and then we've got to add in a new discrete 30 microfarad cap, and I think we'll probably ground it up here. I've done that before on mine. I've heard that that's better for performance, a bit quieter. So we'll just go ahead and do that, but we're not going to tackle that right now. Instead, let's go ahead and just focus on the bias and get that dialed in. So we've got this bias cap. I want to connect right here. This goes to the cathode, which is this bus wire here. We'll ground that here as well as the resistor, which is right here. So we want to give these about, enough space. They can get quite hot. You can see the evidence of that. So not the cap, but the resistor itself. So we want to make sure that it's spaced out okay, far enough away from everything that it's not going to be a problem. And yeah, pretty straightforward. And you might be asking, Tanner, why are you keeping this resistor, not putting in something new? Well, the bias on the amp with this resistor was exactly 100% plate dissipation at 120 volts, which is honestly pretty remarkable. So yeah, that's reason enough to keep it. And the other reason is I don't have a 68 ohm resistor in my supply. So instead of delaying this project, by another week to order one resistor from our buddies over at Mauser, it just makes more sense to just run it as is. So that's what we'll do. So I was just checking continuity to ground to see which of the tag strips here is the preamp ground, and then I marked it with a Sharpie so I can find it later. It's basically going to be running the ground for this cap up through the grommet to that position. So it's not grounded here. It'll be grounded with the preamps. And it only has to go to about here. So then I can just go ahead and find my wire. Figure this cap will be something like this right here. So I basically just want to run it from there up and over to there. So probably about this long. I'm going to let the silicone dry before trying to mess with this, because whenever I move this, it's going to move the cap. But we've got this side connected in. That's all looking good. And we know where to mark it over here. So effectively, we are done on this side, outside of potentially adding in safety diodes to the rectifier. TBD on that. I did that on mine. I would probably recommend doing that on this one as well. And then I still don't know what's going on over here. That's something we'll have to test at a later date, because I don't really get it. But otherwise, all of this is pretty much good to go. We'll still need to do things like clean the tube pins and whatever else, but overall, very pleased. So we're gonna end here tonight and pick this up tomorrow. Off camera, I just did a little bit more work. I connected the ground off that 30 microfarad cap up here. You can't see it, but just behind the tube there. And then I also added the diodes to the rectifier tube socket, kind of a nice little safety feature. I did that on my AC30 as well. I've talked about that in many videos. Just seems like a no-brainer thing to do with these, especially because rectifiers tend to not be very good quality nowadays, and this does not have a vintage one. It's got that Chinese dragon one, as I recall. So next up, there's a lot of things we can do, but I kind of want to just turn the amp on, make sure everything's okay on the power section, because we did change and update this quite a bit, and then we can move on to these caps here and tackling some of the other things going on in the amp. So let's start there. Probably not a lot to show in the video, but just letting you guys know my process. All right, got the Jazzmaster real quick. Just gonna check the normal channel because that's the simplest of the channels, and see how it's sounding. Yeah, I did check the bias, and it biased exactly 100%. sounds awesome. Let's go halfway real quick. Cool, so the normal channel sounded perfect, and that really just confirms the power section is good to go. So we can just shift all our attention up here, and the normal channel is very simple, so that tells us the bones are good, and then we just gotta really focus in on the top boost and the vibrato circuits specifically to just kind of hone it in. So we're gonna replace these can caps first. This is a dual 8 microfarad can cap, and then this is a single 30 microfarad thereabouts for the top boost. So we'll get both of these swapped out with some discrete mod caps mounted here. And then from there, we'll dive into to those two different channels. So I'd probably just time lapse through this real quick. So I've got those all silicone together, so they're not going to go anywhere once it dries and hardens. So we're just going to let it sit for a while before we try and move any of the leads or anything, because it's going to mess it all up. And then really the plan is to connect the 3 grounds together to this ground point right here. We know it's quiet because the amp was running quiet, so that's going to be totally fine. And then the positives, we got the 2 8 microfarad caps. Those will be going to the ketchup and mustard wires here. And then this 30 microfarad will be going right here to where this blue wire is. So we'll just be making extensions for them and heat shrinking so that it's all safe and neat. But we're just going to let this sit for a while. It's been siliconed all the way around and on the bottom, so it'll be very sturdy and should be good. It's always a little tough because modern components are so much smaller than the vintage ones. For example, this little cap is half of this giant can cap. So this is 2 of these, and obviously I have 2 of them stacked together, and they barely take up, maybe a quarter of this size. So yeah, just a little bit tricky, but should be great once it's solid. So let's let it sit and we'll come back. So let's see how solid it is now. It's been about 30 minutes and literally not going to go anywhere. So perfect. That's going to be extremely solid. So now we just got to worry about getting these connections right. I'm going to get some heat shrink and start planning this out a little bit. That's the fun thing with these Vox amps. It's like, it's going to be a bit messy and chaotic, but that's how it's always been in these amps. So, look at this. These are, I believe, factory wires. Just kind of crazy, but that's part of it. That's part of the charm. Cool, there are the filter cap swaps done over here. Everything looks pretty good to me. Nice solid wire, good connections, multiple J hooks here to get those 3 joined into one with this wire right there. So very, very happy with how all that came out. So now we can go ahead and shift our attention all the way over to the cathode bypass caps. There's 1 original here and then 2 swaps here and here. I don't know if you guys can see, I can't remember if I pointed this out yet or not, but you can see hopefully there, the previous tech did this really cool little like pig's tail spiral here for a lot of the components, all the components they changed, which is quite a lot to be honest. And it's a mismatch of parts, which is always a little weird to me. You've got like an Iskra here, and then you've got, one of these blue guys, whatever this is, and this looks like a really small carbon film. I'm not sure if that's a half watt or quarter watt. It's definitely smaller than most of my half watts. So yeah, just kind of a bit odd, interesting over here. You guys can see same sort of thing. So it is their calling card as the tech, which is kind of cool. I like having your own style, so to speak. But yeah, I'm not sure what to do with those. I think I'm going to leave all of those for now. The owner really is not super, crazy about making it vintage restoration and making all the resistors match and everything else. We're not really opening that can of worms. Instead, we're just making this functional primarily. So we're going to replace this cathode bypass cap, leave the other ones for now because they're probably fine. And yeah, give that a quick quick test. These are pretty tricky to get because the tag strip is all the way underneath this selector for the speed of the trim. And it's kind of interesting from the factory, you can see they actually laid down the tags here and here. I'm not going to try and rebend those up because they'll very likely break. Pretty brittle at this point, but what we can do is just kind of try and mount it out off to the side so that we can solder in the back there without having to remove these resistors and lift this whole section out just to reach it, which is a bit extreme. Awesome, that looks good. And from here, I think let's go ahead and turn it back on, run it through the cab, and make sure all of this is happy. And then we can continue to dive into the top boost circuit. Sweet, that looks pretty good. So now let's just go ahead and plug it back in, make sure everything's happy with all of these changes before moving on to the top boost circuit and figuring out what's going on there. Let's go ahead and investigate this top boost channel. See, because we replaced the main filter cap for it, see if that made any difference. So this almost comes across like a treble control. All the way up is very bright. Sounds like we're adding treble. Much fuller. This is behaving much more like a treble control to me than this one. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Very odd. This really just does sound like there's no bass end and this is adding bass. So these might be wired backwards. Behaves like a good AC30, cleans up very, very well. But yeah, definitely something weird going on here. So let's go ahead and check the vibrato channel now. I mean, we already checked it before, it did not work, but let's see if we have better luck now that we've fixed some other components in the amp. Seemed like when I was testing it the first time that there was in fact some modulation going on. It was cutting in and out for me. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, but the actual channel itself seems to be passing audio fine. And ignore the really loud hum because I've got a guitar 6 inches from the transformer. Awesome. Okay, that thing gets really, really deep and wonky, so I brought it down quite a bit, which I think is more usable. So awesome. I am really stoked. Anyways, we'll from there.